Close your eyes for 1 second. It's a Friday night in 1983. Somebody's basement, somebody's older cousin's stereo, the kind with the big silver dials, and a song comes on that you don't hear anymore. Not on the radio, not on the best of the 80s playlists. Nobody talks about it. But somewhere, a long time later, you heard it again in a Dr. Dre beat, in a Biggie hook, in a Whitney Houston vocal that changed everything, and you never made the connection, because nobody told you the connection existed. That's what this list is. 10 songs that radio forgot, that VH1 skipped, that don't even show up on most greatest 80s R&B lists. But every single one of them reached forward into hip-hop, into techno, into pop music you know by heart, and left a fingerprint that never got erased. You know the sound. You just never met the song that made it. Stay with me, because by the end of this one, you're going to hear the whole decade differently. Number 10, Midnight Star. Picture a club in 1983. Vocoder robots on the dance floor were nothing new by then, but this one didn't just sound like a robot. It sounded like a whole new language. That's Midnight Star's Freakazoid. A band of Kentucky State University students who traded their horns for synthesizers because a young Kentucky funk band was watching Prince eat everybody's lunch, and Reggie Calloway decided it was time to change the whole approach. And here is the part that still gets me every time I think about it. The vocoder on that record wasn't some studio gimmick borrowed off the shelf. Vincent Calloway, Reggie's brother, used to take apart telephones as a kid just to understand how they made sound. By the time he got his hands on a real vocoder, he already understood the machine better than most engineers in Nashville or LA. That obsession is the entire hook of Freakazoid. The record hit number 2 on the R&B chart. It went double platinum with its parent album, No Parking on the Dance Floor, and it planted something. That "please report to the dance floor" vocoder phrase you've heard sampled in house records for 40 years, it starts right here. Midnight Star didn't just make a hit. They handed the entire genre a new vocabulary. And what comes next? One of these stories ends up buried inside a song you've heard 1,000 times, and I promise you, you don't know it's there. We'll get there. Stay with me. But before we go any further, if nobody ever told you about this channel, think about how close you came to never finding this. Don't let that happen to somebody else, and don't let it happen to you again. Hit subscribe right now, turn on notifications, because where we're going next in this story, you cannot afford to tap out. Alright, now back to it. Number 9, Bernard Wright. You know the feeling of a song that sounds like it's from the future and the past at the same time. That's Bernard Wright's Who Do You Love, 1985.
I used to be the great pretender.
A young jazz-funk prodigy from Queens, barely into his 20s, co-writing with the great Lenny White, laying down a groove so smooth it almost hides how complicated it actually is underneath. It peaked at number 6 on the R&B chart. Good, not massive. The kind of song that plays at a cookout, gets everybody nodding, and then quietly disappears from rotation by the following summer. That's how most people's relationship with Who Do You Love ended in the 80s. But here's the part that still gets me. More than a decade later, a producer chopped that bass line up and rebuilt it underneath LL Cool J's Loungin'. Suddenly a song that hadn't been on the radio in years was back on MTV, on the Billboard charts, in rotation next to Puff Daddy and Mary J. Blige. Most of the people singing along to Loungin' in 1996 had no idea they were singing along to Bernard Wright. That's the thing about a groove built right. It doesn't age out. It just waits for somebody to find it again. The next one has a story that starts in a Los Angeles studio and ends with 6 women rewriting what an R&B band was even allowed to look like.
I fed them the things they love to hear.
Number 8. Sherelle and Alexander O'Neal. If you were anywhere near a radio in 1985, you remember this one, even if the name has slipped away. Sherelle and Alexander O'Neal. Trading verses back and forth on Saturday Love, that soft, aching duet about two people running into each other after everything fell apart. It went to number 2 on the R&B chart. It's the kind of song that still makes somebody's shoulders drop when it comes on. And here is the part that still gets me. This record almost didn't happen the way it did. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis had just opened their own studio in Minneapolis Flight Time, and their engineer walked out mid-session. Two young producers with no formal engineering experience, blowing speakers, misconnecting cables. Learning how to run a professional studio in real time, under pressure, with the clock running. Saturday Love is what came out of that chaos. And that studio, the one they were learning to run while making this record, became the exact place where Janet Jackson's Control got built the following year. The same walls. The same trial and error. You can't separate the song from the studio that made it, and you can't separate that studio from half of what became modern R&B. Number 7 is one I have been wanting to tell you about for a long time. Before we get to the top half of this list, I want to say something. If you're the kind of person who remembers a song your whole body responds to before your mind even catches up, you're exactly who this channel is built for. I'm not trying to just play you the hits. I'm trying to find the story underneath the hit, the part nobody put in the liner notes. If that's what you're here for, stay a while, hit subscribe. There's a lot more of these stories waiting, and I'd love to tell you the next one. All right, let's get back to it, because it's about to get good. Number 7, Climax. Some of you just smiled reading this next name, Climax. 6 women: Bernadette Cooper, Cheryl Cooley, Lynn Malsby, Robin Greider, Lorena Porter, Joyce Fenderella, Irby, playing every instrument themselves, at a time when almost nobody let a woman near a guitar solo, let alone a producer's chair. Meeting in the Ladies' Room hit number 4 on the R&B chart in 1985, off the back of a real night at a real club. Where one woman ducked into the bathroom to avoid a man she didn't want to see. And if you grew up with this one in the house, you feel it differently than everyone else. Because this wasn't just a song about a bathroom. It was 6 black women telling their label, "We'll write it ourselves, we'll play it ourselves,
because I'm not in the mood. Don't.
And we're not asking permission." Here is where it gets interesting. Climax became the first all-female self-contained R&B band to go platinum. Not a girl group, a band. Every instrument, every note, theirs. And the door they kicked open for women who wanted to be musicians first and a girl group second is still open today. You just don't always see who walked through it first. The next one takes you back even further. Detroit, 1983. A song that doesn't sound like anything else on this list because it wasn't trying to. Number 6, Cybotron. Take me back to Detroit. Not the Motown Detroit. Everybody already knows a different one. Industrial, cold. A city figuring out what it was after the factories started closing. That's the Detroit that made Cybotrons clear. Juan Atkins and Rick Davis met in an electronics class at a community college outside Ann Arbor. Davis, a Vietnam veteran who'd spent his combat disability pay on a synthesizer. Atkins, a teenager already obsessed with the sound of the future. Together, in 1983, they built Clear, a track soaked in Kraftwerk, funk bass lines, and a robotic vocal that sounded like nothing coming out of any other American studio that year. And here is the part that still gets me every time I think about it. Clear didn't just become a club favorite. It became the blueprint. Juan Atkins is one of the 3 Detroit musicians credited with inventing an entire genre techno, and Clear is the record most people point to as where it started. Missy Elliott sampled that arpeggio decades later on a Grammy-winning record. But before any of that, it was just 2 guys in a Detroit basement trying to build a sound nobody had heard yet. You know exactly what I'm talking about, if you've ever heard a record that felt like it was arriving from somewhere else entirely. The next one, I have been saving this one, because it doesn't just connect to hip-hop, it connects to one of the most beloved records hip-hop ever made. Number 5, The System. You know this one. You have known it your whole life, even if you never learned its name. The System, Mike Murphy and David Frank, and their 1987 single, Don't Disturb This Groove. A slow, synthesized, deeply patient groove that took the R&B chart all the way to number 1 that May. But sit with me for a minute, because where this song's DNA went is a story that makes it sound even better going forward. David Frank, the keyboardist half of The System, is the same producer behind Mumtume's Juicy Fruit. And Juicy Fruit is the record a young Brooklyn rapper named the Notorious B.I.G. sampled, note for note, for his 1994 single, Juicy. One of the most beloved hip-hop records ever made, is built on the bones of a sound David Frank was pioneering years before. In the same studio sessions that produced Don't Disturb This Groove. And this is the part that still gets me every time I think about it. None of it was an accident. Frank was one of the first R&B producers to build songs entirely around drum machines and sequencers, years before it became standard. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis themselves have said, "The System's records shape their own technique. That song doesn't age. The people in it do. That's the thing about great music. It just keeps finding new rooms to live in." This is the one I mentioned earlier, and I told you I didn't expect it to end here. Number 4, Kashif. If you were anywhere near a radio in 1983, Help Yourself to My Love might not ring a bell right away. But close your eyes. A synthesizer that sounds warm instead of cold. A bass line that moves like it's got somewhere to be. That's Kashif, born Michael Jones in Harlem, raised in 8 different foster homes before he ever picked up an instrument. And here is the part that still gets me. Kashif wasn't just a singer. He was one of the first R&B producers to build entire records around synthesizer technology and MIDI. At a moment when most of the genre was still leaning on live horn sections. Stevie Wonder gets most of the credit for that shift. Kashif was right there beside him, quietly rewriting the rulebook. And then, in 1985, a record label brought him a young, unknown singer from New Jersey. Named Whitney Houston. Kashif produced her earliest recordings, including Thinking About You, a duet with her on Houston's debut album, the one that would go on to sell over 30 million copies and become the best-selling debut album by a female artist in history. Before the world knew her name, Kashif already believed in her voice enough to put his own sound around it. Everything before this was real. But number 1? Number 1 is the one that started all of this for me. And I think once you hear it, you'll understand why. Before we get there, I want you to sit with something. Every song on this list changed the sound of music in a way most people never traced back to its source. But the next 2, one of them didn't just influence a genre. One of them helped a rapper get his very first feature on an R&B record. And number 1? Number 1 is sampled in more songs than almost any record on this entire list. Take a breath. This is the one that started it all. Number 3. Renee and Angela. Some of y'all heard this for the first time in a very specific place, a cousin's car, a family cookout, somebody's older sibling's mixtape. Renee and Angela's Save Your Love. For #1, 1985, a #1 R&B hit for the Los Angeles duo, off their album A Street Called Desire. And here is the part that still gets me every time I think about it. This record features rapper Curtis Blow, front and center, not tucked in as a novelty, as an actual featured performer on an R&B chart topper. In 1985, that almost never happened. Alongside Chaka Khan's I Feel For You that same year, Save Your Love is one of the very first times a rapper got billed as a genuine collaborator on an R&B hit, instead of a gimmick bolted onto the end of a track. Renee Moore and Angela Winbush were already quietly shaping the sound of the decade behind the scenes, writing for Janet Jackson's debut album, giving Stephanie Mills her first #1 single. But this one, the one with Curtis Blow's voice woven straight into the hook, is the one that opened a door. Every R&B meets rap collaboration you've heard since every duet, every guest verse on a love song has a little bit of Save Your Love in its foundation. You just went somewhere just now. I know you did. Number 2. SOS Band. Close your eyes for 1 second. It's 1983. A drum machine that most professional musicians didn't trust, yet the Roland TR-808 kicks in under a bass line that sounds like nothing else on the radio that year. That's the SOS Band's Just Be Good to Me. And here is the part that still gets me. The song was written and produced by 2 young musicians named Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, who at the time were still full-time members of The Time, Prince's backing band. Prince had a strict rule: no outside production work. A snowstorm hit during their mixing session for this very record, made them miss a Time concert, and Prince fired them on the spot for breaking that rule. Getting fired turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to them. Just Be Good to Me became a hit, launched Jam and Lewis as a production duo, and led directly to their work with Janet Jackson on Control and Rhythm Nation records that reshaped pop music for the rest of the decade. Tupac Shakur sampled this record on Me Against the World. A Fatboy Slim-produced version hit #1 in the UK a decade later. One tough winter night in a Minneapolis studio, and an entire sound was born. That song doesn't age. The people in it do. That's the thing about great music. And number one is the one that started all of this for me. Number 1, Zap. You know exactly what song this is before I even finish the sentence. That talk box, that deep, robotic voice, sliding through the groove like it's got all the time in the world. Zap's More Bounce to the Ounce, 1980. Roger Troutman and his brothers, out of Dayton, Ohio, with Bootsy Collins, right there co-producing. And here is the part that still gets me every time I think about it. This song has been sampled in more than 300 other records. EPMD sampled it in 1988. Ice Cube sampled it for Friday. The Notorious B.I.G. sampled it on Going Back to Cali. Dr. Dre built the entire West Coast G-Funk sound around the DNA of this record's bass line. And when Roger Troutman himself picked up the talkbox one more time in 1995 for a song called California Love with Dr. Dre and Tupac Shakur, it became the biggest hit of his entire career, 15 years after this record first came out. That song doesn't age. The people in it do. That's the thing about great music. It was built at a Pepsi 8-inspired title, in a Dayton studio, by four brothers nobody outside their hometown had heard of yet. And it ended up as one of the most sampled songs in the history of recorded music, sitting quietly underneath decades of hip-hop that most people never traced back to where it started. Everything on this list connects somewhere, but this one is the root. Every one of these 10 songs, the vocoder, the drum machine, the talkbox, the duet, the studio built out of blown speakers, it all runs back through records just like this one. Songs nobody remembers by name, holding up everything you do remember. That song doesn't age. The people in it do. That's the thing about great music. It holds the moment, and it keeps moving long after everybody stops paying attention to where it came from. 10 songs, 10 rooms, 10 studios, 10 stories that never made it into the greatest hits of the 80s specials, but never stopped shaping what came after them either. If one of these took you somewhere just now, tell me where. Tell me who was in the room with you the first time you heard it. Until the next one, the archive runs deep.